a father on the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list was finally arrested after more than a decade for ending the lives of his own 2 daughters in Texas. Yaser Abdel Said is an Egyptian-American who was born on January 27, 1957. He was born in Sinai, Egypt. He came to the US on a student visa in 1983, and 4 years later, he married Patricia Tissy Owens in February 1987, when he was 30 and she was 15. The couple had 3 children, a son named Islam Said, born in 1988, Amina, who was born in 1989, and Sarah, who was born in 1990. Said also had a previous daughter, born in 1987 with another woman. Said later became a permanent resident, eventually gaining citizenship in 1997. Patricia later alleged that Said abused her during their marriage. The girls had also stated that their father physically and intimately abused them. Amina told the authorities that she had been penetrated at least once and confirmed that their mother knew about the situation but did nothing to stop it. The sisters had to retract their stories due to their father threatening to end their lives. Said would often spy on his daughters by video or audio taping them without their knowledge. Amina stated that she was afraid of using the public telephone because her father gets in everywhere, he knows everything. She also wrote in emails that her father intended to end her life. When she was 16, Said took Amina to Egypt to arrange a marriage for her to a much older friend of his, but Amina rejected the marriage. Sarah got an after-school job working in a convenience store. Said began videotaping her at work and punished her for smiling too much at the customers. Amina began dating a boy named Joseph Moreno, whom she met while taking Taekwondo classes. When Said was out of the country, she felt anxious about meeting Joseph, imagining that Said would be watching her with binoculars. Amina told Joseph not to call or text her if she sent a code word to him because she was afraid that her father would go through her phone. Amina was worried that Joseph would be harmed or worse by her father, and she refused to give her father his name while he was trying to beat his name out of her. Eventually, Said found a note that she had written to Joseph. Amina told him that these notes were to an imaginary boyfriend, but he did not trust Amina and continued his search in order to uncover Amina's relationship. Said, who was very controlling over his family, felt that his daughters, 18-year-old Amina and 17-year-old Sarah, dishonored the family, primarily due to them dating non-Muslims, as well as for refusing to enter arranged marriages. Said moved his family 20 miles to a new house in Lewisville, Texas, prompting Amina to make plans to run away with Joseph, get married in Las Vegas, and start a new life. Joseph then dropped out of high school in order to earn money so that he could save up enough money in order to help her leave. After Christmas in 2007, Amina and Sarah ran away with their mother, Patricia, to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where Amina's boyfriend had relatives. Patricia told her daughters that December 31st was the day her mother passed away, and that she wanted to drive to East Texas to put flowers on her grave. However, after being pestered by Said and other relatives with phone calls that were initially unsuccessful, eventually Patricia decided to return home with the girls. When Patricia communicated this change of plans to her daughters, Sarah reluctantly agreed to return, while Amina refused, ultimately seeking refuge in her friend's house. Patricia drove to the friend's house and pounded on the door, starting an argument with Amina to try to convince her to return to Said. Amina still refused to go. Patricia insisted and stood unmoved in the doorway, saying that her father had forgiven her and would like the girls to return home. On January 1st, 2008, Yaser Said took Amina and Sarah to his taxi cab, kissed them, and told them he was taking them out to dinner. Patricia initially wanted to come along, but Said had told her that he wanted to talk to the girls himself. He drove them both to Irving, where he fatally shot both girls in the taxi cab. Amina, who was shot twice, passed away instantly, while Sarah, who sustained 9 shots, managed to call 911 screaming, "Help! My dad shot me! I am losing my life! I am losing my life!" before she passed away. Said's taxi was soon discovered by another cab driver outside the service entrance of the Omni Mandalay Hotel, now the Omni Las Colinas Hotel. By the time the police located the cab, the sisters were deceased and their father had disappeared, along with his handgun and all of his savings. Patricia filed for divorce the following year in 2009. Alleged sightings of Saeed driving a taxi in New York City and in Newark, New Jersey, prompted the FBI to issue a statement suggesting he could be in the area. The case went cold for 6 years, until December 4th, 2014, when Saeed was added to the FBI 10 Most Wanted Fugitives with a $100,000 reward for any information leading to his arrest. A break in the case came on August 14th, 2017, when a maintenance worker at an apartment complex in Bedford, Texas, where Saeed's son, Islam, rented an apartment, reported seeing a man matching Saeed's description inside of Islam's apartment. When the detectives showed him a picture of Yaser Saeed, the worker identified him as the man he had seen in the apartment. At approximately 6:30 p.m. that evening, an agent came into the apartment to interview Islam. He was upset and refused to cooperate. He then called someone, saying, "We have a problem." At 1 a.m., a search warrant was executed on the apartment, which was empty at the time. However, the police observed a sliding glass patio door open. Below the patio, they noticed a shrub with broken branches, suggesting someone had jumped off the patio and landed on the bush. Next to the flattened bush, they found a pair of eyeglasses, which they collected as evidence. They collected evidence inside the apartment, including several cigarette butts and a toothbrush. The FBI laboratory in Quantico, Virginia, compared the DNA from those items to the DNA of Amina and Sarah, and determined the DNA most likely came from their biological father. 3 years later, in August 2020, the police began 24-hour surveillance on a home in Justin, Texas. They observed Islam and Yasin Abdul Fattah Saeed, Yaser's brother, entering and exiting the home, and the shadow of another man inside the home after the two men had left. After a week of surveillance, the FBI obtained a search warrant and arrested Saeed on August 26th. On the same day in nearby Euless, Texas, they also arrested 32-year-old Islam and 59-year-old Yasin. Saeed's son and brother were both charged with concealing a person from arrest. The authorities suspect that other people helped Saeed evade arrest over the years, and a federal criminal complaint said that Islam was in contact with 2 more of his father's brothers. Saeed was taken into federal custody by the FBI and was then transferred to Dallas County, where he was held until his trial, which commenced in August 2022. He was found guilty of capital slaying on August 9th after a week-long trial and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He is serving out his sentence at the McConnell unit, located near Beeville, Texas. On January 19th, 2021, Islam pleaded guilty to harboring a fugitive, conspiring to harbor a fugitive, and 1 count of conspiracy to obstruct justice. On April 27th, he was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison for the charges. He is serving his sentence at Federal Correctional Institution, Big Spring. Yasin claimed that he hated his brother for what he did and that he would never have helped him if he had known what would happen. On February 4th, 2021, he was found guilty of conspiracy and harboring a fugitive. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison on June 4th. He is serving his sentence at Federal Correctional Institution, Bastrop. A South Carolina couple has been arrested and charged in the 2010 fatal shooting of a young student in Kansas. 19-year-old German Clerici was an Argentine immigrant and student known for his thick New Jersey accent. German and his car were reported missing by his mother in late January 2010. She said that she had not heard from him for the last few days of January and that his car was also missing. A few days later, on February 6th, his body was found under a bridge in a culvert in the 8,000 block of Southwest Boyer Road in Butler County. The Wichita-based teen had suffered a fatal gunshot wound to the face. He was identified by his driver's license, which was in his wallet in his pocket. His car was found in Wichita a few months later, on June 8th. an investigation found the car had not been moved in months, and German's personal property was still in the car. The case went cold for 12 years until 2021, when Butler County Sheriff Monty Huey instructed the investigators to take a fresh look at the case. New information was discovered that prompted the investigators to conduct follow-up interviews, uncovering even more information along with new evidence. In the beginning of August 2022, members of the sheriff's office traveled to Simpsonville, South Carolina, to arrest the suspects, Christopher Valadez and Candace Valadez, with the assistance of the Greenville County Sheriff's Office and the Wichita Police Department. Both suspects are former Wichita residents and were expected to be extradited back to Sedgwick County to be charged in connection to the fatal shooting of German. They would have been 20 years old at the time of the slaying. German's girlfriend at the time of his demise, Shauna McKee, claimed that she used to work with both suspects at a Quick Trip gas station in Butler County at the time of the slaying. She claims the two transferred to another location immediately after German's life was ended. Shauna told the Wichita Eagle in 2010 that her slain boyfriend was the best guy in the world. He had the best heart. She said, "He was on the right track. His friends were not bad people." Christopher was charged with second-degree slaying, and Candace was charged with aiding a felon. According to an affidavit, Christopher told the officers that he accidentally shot German in the face. Valadez said that he was sitting on an ottoman when German was shot. The affidavit said that a friend of German told officers that Christopher said they ended his life. The affidavit read, "We did it. We slain Jersey." Christopher said that they were not going to call 911 because he had marijuana plants growing in the basement and he was worried about police intervention. Christopher told the others in the house, if they did not help him clean up and dispose of the body, there would be another body to get rid of. Christopher said they put German's body in a tub and drove to a bridge where they dumped him. They did not wear shoes to dump his body, so they did not leave any shoe prints. On December 1st, 2023, he pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of criminal threat, and obstructing legal process or official duty. Christopher Valadez was sentenced to 32 months in prison. On February 2nd, 2024, Candace Valadez entered a guilty plea. The District Court of Sedgwick County sentenced her to time served. Myrtle Brown's family has wondered what happened to her for more than 3 decades. Then, her brother unexpectedly solved her disappearance when he saw a familiar face on television. In May 1990, 35-year-old Myrtle Brown said goodbye and went to New York City to visit her best friend. But Myrtle never came home. Before Myrtle disappeared, she had left behind a few clues. She had called her mother to tell her that someone had stolen her purse while she was in New York, which contained her money, identification, and her epilepsy medication. She told her family that she was not feeling well and went to the emergency room at Kings County Hospital in Brooklyn to get a medication refill. That was the last time the family heard from her. For weeks, her mother and family members visited local police precincts and hospitals, but found no answers, and eventually the case went cold. For 32 years, Myrtle Brown's family wondered what had happened to her. But then, in 2022, her brother Robert watched a segment on NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt about the cold case squad in the New York City Medical Examiner's Office. During the segment, he noticed a facial reconstruction on a missing person poster that looked eerily familiar. He said, "I saw a young lady that could be or could not have been my sister. And I said to myself, wow, I wonder if that could be her." Robert reached out to Dr. Angela Solar, the Assistant Director of Forensic Anthropology at the Medical Examiner's Office. Soon, Dr. Angela started to look into Myrtle's case. She quickly surmised that the face Robert had seen was not his sister. It belonged to a woman found buried beneath a nightclub in 2008. But Dr. Angela compiled a case based on what she knew about Myrtle. She said, "I took a look at the reconstruction and noticed, okay, I am probably looking for a middle-aged black woman. It all matched with what the family was telling us, and we were also informed that she went missing in May of 1990. So I knew exactly where to start my search. Before long, Dr. Angela believed that she had tracked down Myrtle. She called up Robert and Myrtle's daughter, Ebony, and told them what she had found and sent them a picture of a deceased woman who she believed was Myrtle. Both Ebony and Robert recognized their missing loved one, and Dr. Angela told them what had happened to her. Back in May 1990, Myrtle had gone to a hospital in Brooklyn as she said she would, but while she was waiting for assistance in the emergency room, she had a seizure and passed away. Though Myrtle had given her name and birth date, she did not have an ID, and the hospital never formally registered her. Her daughter, Ebony, who was 13 years old when she disappeared, said that she never thought her mother was no longer alive. She just thought her mother wanted something different out of life. Ebony was just very sad and confused at the time. She said, "It was very hard. When you have your prom and just, becoming a young woman, it is hard." With the mystery of Myrtle's disappearance solved, her family was finally able to mourn her demise. They were able to lay her to rest through a virtual memorial. Ebony said, "When someone is in your mind missing, you do not close the chapter. We were able to do that." Dr. Angela is hopeful that her team can help other families find similar closure. She said, even though it did not end up being the individual the recreation was based on, it helped us resolve a case. It made a difference, and that is the whole point, to get people to stop and think for a moment and follow through and give us a phone call. The cold case of a California newspaper columnist in 1985 was tragic and puzzling for years. A woman falsely confessed her involvement after being pressured by the detectives, and a man spent years in jail after being falsely accused. But true justice has been served at last. On July 7, 1985, Jane Hylton, a mother of 6, was 54 years old when she was fatally beaten and stabbed in the bedroom of her employer's home in El Dorado Hills, California. Jane and her 13-year-old teenage daughter, Anker, were staying at a home owned by her Foothill Times employer, Wilma Klein, because Jane was at odds with her husband. Wilma's daughter, Maureen Klein, and her boyfriend was also staying at the home, as well as Wilma's grandson, 20-year-old Ricky Davis, and his girlfriend, 19-year-old Connie Dahl. Ricky was the one who found the body after returning from a local party with Connie. When the couple arrived around 3:30 a.m., they found Autumn waiting outside, who came back late from hanging out with 3 boys she met at the park and did not want to get in trouble with her mother. The 3 entered the house together. Ricky then found blood in the hallway outside the master bedroom and found Jane on his mother's blood-soaked bed. Maureen and her boyfriend were not there as they had embarked on a camping trip the night before. Ricky and Connie immediately called the police in a panic. They had no idea what happened, only that they walked in on the crime scene. Jane had 29 stab wounds, including some through the skull. One of the wounds were so vicious, the tip of the knife broke off. Blood soaked her slashed floral nightgown, drenched the rug, and splattered the walls. A bite mark pierced the back of her shoulder, teeth sunk into flesh, as she tried to flee. When the deputies from the El Dorado County Sheriff's Office arrived at the crime scene, Detective Bill Wilson and his partner, Detective Larry Hennick, aggressively questioned the terrified trio, who all denied any involvement. Despite having no evidence or a weapon, the detectives focused on Ricky as a suspect. Autumn told the detectives about the boys she had met in the park hours earlier, but the officers appeared more interested in getting Autumn to admit Ricky was the perpetrator. Detective Hennick told the teen, according to interrogation transcripts reported by the LA Times, "You know Ricky's lying, and we know now, and we want the truth." He continued, "Ricky is a violent guy. He attacked a man with a tire iron because he was upset with him. I have known Ricky a long time. So does Bill. We know what he is capable of." His partner Wilson tried to convince Autumn that the blood on the clothes at the crime scene and the hair found in Jane's hands were Ricky's. Connie disputed the claims and told the detective, "No way, You cannot pin this on Ricky because I was with him all night long." Wilson responded, "You watch." Archie Hylton, the widower, was quickly arrested but provided an alibi as well as genetic material for testing and was just as quickly released. The case went cold due to lack of evidence and remained unsolved for 14 years until 1999 when it was reopened. In 1999, El Dorado County Sheriff's detectives Richard Strasser and Rick Fitzgerald were assigned to the newly reopened cold case. They eventually and wrongly came to consider Ricky as the suspect. This error was based on a news article where Connie was quoted saying Jane's body was lying in bed, like someone placed her there in the position she would normally sleep in. This impression was contrasted with an unclear audio recording where Fitzgerald falsely claimed Ricky said that Jane's body was found lying on the floor. During a 3-hour-long interrogation in November 1999, Strasser and Fitzgerald truthfully said that Ricky was their suspect. Then, the two detectives lied to Connie, saying they had DNA evidence that would tell them everything about Jane's slaying. No DNA testing had ever been conducted in relation to the case at all. Still, Connie initially stood by her story, which also happened to be true. After she provided details strictly consistent with her original interview, Strasser and Fitzgerald doubled down on their approach. The detectives threatened Connie with a charge of slaying and said that if she cooperated, she would be treated leniently. They showed her crime scene photographs and fed her numerous facts, including that Jane was bitten during the attack. By the time the interrogation ended, Connie's account had evolved to fit the facts the detectives fed to her. Connie said that Ricky punched Jane in the face during a fight about Autumn, which ultimately ended with her demise. Connie said that she acted as a lookout, and that Autumn looked on as Ricky stabbed Jane till her end. Connie and Autumn then moved Jane's body from the floor to the bed, and all three left to buy alcohol and practice the story they would tell the police. Connie was unable to describe the weapon, nor when and where Ricky retrieved it. She also could not say where he disposed of the weapon and his bloody clothes. Subsequent interviews with Autumn and Ricky yielded different results. They stood by their original stories. The detectives again lied to Ricky, saying that Autumn had also implicated him. Autumn insisted she had no reason to protect Ricky, even when threatened by the detectives with culpability for biting her own mother during the slaying. In a second interview, however, Connie pretended to remember other facts about the crime that yielded an increasingly fanciful storyline about the slaying that included Autumn being present at the crime and sprayed with blood. A third interview resulted in Connie saying she was probably the one who bit Jane. Connie crumbled under the relentless questioning of the detectives who made false statements about the evidence and the tricks of her own mind that left her believing that she was involved in the slaying, that she was, in fact, the biter whose teeth had sunk into the woman's back. After a series of manipulative interrogations over a period of years, Connie falsely confessed that she had participated in the slaying. Threatened by the detectives and ultimately charged by local prosecutors, Connie eventually testified against her ex-boyfriend in exchange for a plea deal on a manslaughter conviction. Connie was jailed for only 1 year in county jail before returning home to try to pick up life with her young children. Based almost entirely on Connie's testimony, Ricky was convicted of second-degree slaying in August of 2005 and sentenced to 16 years to life in state prison. But Connie could not escape that terrible image of herself, the consequence of a method of policing that allowed detectives to deceive and threaten in pursuit of a confession. Connie passed away in 2014. Her sons still could never quite believe their mother was a perpetrator. They were right. Ricky always maintained his innocence. He first contacted Northern California Innocence Project in 2006, and they began a thorough reinvestigation of the case. This time, substantial DNA testing was conducted in conjunction with the reformed El Dorado County District Attorney's Office. A number of pieces of evidence at the crime scene, including Jane's nightgown and biological material from under her fingernails. The DNA test results revealed an unknown male DNA profile on the nightgown in the area of the bite mark, and a consistent male DNA profile under the victim's fingernails. The test results excluded Ricky, Connie, and Autumn as the sources of the DNA. The unknown male DNA profile found on the nightgown indicated that Connie did not bite the victim, contrary to her testimony at trial. In April 2019, Ricky was exonerated and freed. 5 days after he was released, Michael Green was arrested based on the strength of DNA recovered from the bite mark found on Jane's shoulder. Early 2022, Green pleaded no contest to slaying in the second degree, and he was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison in September 2022. At the time of Jane's slaying, Green was 17 years old. He was one of the 3 boys Autumn met at the park and was hanging out with earlier before she returned home. He followed her home. Unbeknownst to the girl, he broke inside, ended her mother's life, and left. El Dorado County DA Vern Pearson said in a press release, "Justice has been served, but it took too long and some awful mistakes were made in the past to get to this moment. I have personally apologized to Ricky Davis and also want to say we are sorry to Jane Hylton's family for the mistakes in handling this case in the past.